So we mentioned it, right? That adoption curve or change curve that does not necessarily only apply to tech, but for those of our listeners who have not heard of it or are less familiar with it, it's a concept that was introduced in the '60s by a guy named Everett Rogers, and I think it has seen some evolution since. But it is this imperfectly shaped bell curve that basically tells you that with every change that kind of happens in the world, there's usually a minority and like a tiny, tiny minority that would be considered as like the innovators. Those are way ahead of the curve, way ahead of everyone. They are playing around with things that are like never heard of by the majority of people, right? So the true early innovators driving it. So curious, kind of in your river analogy, what's driving that river? Because that would be the innovator. Then you have the early adopters, which is a bit of a bigger group, say 15, 16, 70% of people usually. And that is, I always see that group as a bit of a bridge, kind of. They start, it's a bigger group that starts adopting it. They don't feel like as foreign as those innovators. They are able to kind of test it, bring it to the real world applications and influence the people around them because they are more in touch with that day-to-day reality. Then there is the pragmatists. That's kind of where it really starts hitting kind of that the masses. So that is the middle group, the biggest group, the top of the bell curve. And then followed by the skeptics, who are usually a bit later in adopting it and resisting it at first, pushing back, challenging it, mostly focusing on the risks. And then the traditionalists, those are the last people standing. Kind of, they resist it until they really can't anymore. And I think it is interesting. I'm curious for your thoughts on it. Like, where on that curve are we currently with AI? Where are you personally? What are you seeing around you? Where are we? And one thing that I kind of want to just plug there is I think, and maybe this is just giving away my thoughts around it, I feel like we're still focusing on those two extremes. Like on the one hand, we're talking a lot about kind of how it's going to change the world and it's this big thing, but still a bit foreign. We don't know what it is. So it feels in that like early adoption innovation stage. Whereas on the other side, there is the true skeptics and they're focusing on the risks. And that's kind of where the banning and the shaming happens. And I sometimes feel like maybe we're overlooking this massive, messy middle where people are not skeptic enough to really see the risks, but not advanced enough to really unlock the true potential. So curious for your thoughts and also like your own reflections on where do you fit?
Well, I reference that curve in a lot of my conversations and work that we do. And it does make me happy to see that the change curve has changed over time. It would be pretty funny if we're still calling the traditionalists laggards. But so a few updates.
Who's not offended by that?
Traditionalists, that sounds so much better. But and for me, I agree. Like people do get focused on the extremes because sometimes they're more clear on what they like, don't like, what they need, what their preferences are, what their viewpoints are. And what this curve usually indicates is that those folks are pretty solid in their preferences and are going to do whatever they're going to do. And there's no room to influence and change perceptions and thoughts and bring along and, adapt behaviors. But you're going to get incremental versus that larger majority in the group and to focus efforts there. But it's harder because it's a bigger group of people. And to your point, I think you used the word, it's a bit messier. It's less clean cut, right, on what you do. But I personally would say, like, putting myself in those shoes of what you were just describing and thinking about the work we're doing at Sidekick, because we fit into this bucket and are figuring it out as we go, right? Yeah. But I personally would say in most things, I'm like an early adopter. I'm like, let's figure it out. We'll tinker around, no, enough to try things, but not enough to kind of be dangerous. So you need to kind of rein yourself in. And that's a bit of what we've been trying to do at a Sidekick with our team, and understanding like, where is everybody on there? And me, I tend to move fast, which I know and can have cause whiplash for some people for sure, which I need to slow down. And I have to make sure I don't get impatient with the like, come on, how do you not see this? Like, let's go. We've talked about this. Like, let's adopt this. Let's start tinkering. Let's apply it. But you need to like respect where everybody is and meet people where they're at on the curve. But I think that's what we've tried to do at Sidekick, and is a good step that maybe folks want to think about, right?
Yep.
If in your own situation, your own team with your peers, if you're managing a team, leading an organization, like what does your culture say about where folks might fall there, or where as an organization you might fall? Do you have one that tests and experiments more? You might be on the other side. Are you one that is more grounded and just naturally regulations and rules, and there's more guidelines that bound your work on a day-to-day? So you need to consider that.
Yeah. And I think if I look at our own team, like I would say we have a pretty progressive team overall. Yeah, I agree. And to your point of experimentation, I think it started with everyone just doing their own little experiments. And then at some point, kind of when we were starting to bring that together, and you were spearheading or leading that, because it, I don't know if it felt like that for you, but it had the risk of like running out of control a little bit. Like everyone was doing their own thing everywhere, which then kind of drove the need for like, okay, let's maybe bring this together. Let's make some strategic decisions around what do we use it for? What tools do we use? How do we make sure that we kind of assess the quality of things?
Well, and at the end of the day, we're in consulting and the realization business. So trust and credibility and privacy in our work is really important. So it does run that risk of getting out of control.
So I think that's a part of what we did. And I'm aligned. I would put you in the early adopters, and in some parts I would put myself kind of a little bit later than that. I was definitely not the first to experiment with AI. But a fast follower, I would say. And then once I got hooked, I start seeing the potential, right? So I'm now more looking into what it could be. So like, how can we, AI is obviously kind of impacting knowledge-based work a lot. And if I go to like, what is the work that we do? It is a lot of knowledge, experience, frameworks that we have like in our back pockets, and we pull whenever we feel like it's applicable. So we've also been looking into like, how do we use that? Can we bundle that? Can we productize that? How can we kind of AI enable what we do today in some sort of a product that might change the world one day?
Totally.
Then at the same time, I'm also every day almost kind of confronted with the limitations. And admittedly, that could be the limitations of AI currently.
Or you.
Or my own limitations. Fair. Exactly. Like, I don't know what I don't know. I have this big idea of like what I think it should be capable of. Well, is it? And I don't always have the resources or the skill sets or the knowledge to properly assess that. And a concept that we talked about in our previous episode on how human can AI be is that human in the loop concept, which I really took to heart, because in everything that we do, like more in the marketing realm, copywriting, writing things, having AI help us do that, accelerate that. And what I said, I'm confronted also with it's not where I think it could be. So it always still involves me to put the right prompts in there, think about it, critically think about what is it that I need, that I want from it. And then also the outcome still requires refinements and things like that. So messy middle, I would say. And then I'll give you 2 examples that made me chuckle again. There was this, like on LinkedIn, someone reached out to me and a million other people probably, but would you be interested in writing a book? And we can help you with that. Disclaimer, we will not use AI. And I was like, well, you use that as a selling point. I think that's dumb. Why aren't you using AI?
Yeah.
Right? So that also, again, shows various different positions on the curve. And then more internally, we were also working on on improving our like Kretz deck and PowerPoint and what that looked like from a design perspective. And then I was chatting with one of our colleagues, and I was like, "Are we going to use AI to improve this?" And then the response was, "No, it's an actual designer," as in like almost defensive. And again, I was like, "Well, why wouldn't we use AI, right?" Like, so two just kind of examples where I've personally ran into like, oh, apparently we are at different kind of stages of adaptation of it, right?
Interesting. I see where you're going with that. So where you're now finding you're moving further ahead on the curve. These interactions are with people that may be not at the same place, right? And coming through it, which is really interesting. Yeah. And I don't think you're alone in that, right? And taking it out of kind of our day-to-day work with our team and our colleagues. I think of the folks that we get to partner with, our clients every single day. And this is like the $1 million kind of question. Not one conversation goes by that this doesn't come up from either a strategic perspective, bigger, overarching, what are we doing, to a more day-to-day ways of working. How can this improve? To, a lot of questions. And I can see folks are concerned, around the ethics and the security and privacy of things. So, questions I've heard, I'm sure you've heard something similar, is, do we even allow AI in our workflows?
Yeah.
Oh, allow. Okay. Yeah. Interesting question. And I get if you're a big, huge company like that with thousands of employees, like that's a big thing. We're talking a team of 7, right? Yeah. Like it's just a different ball game. There's that, and this is like the human in the loop concept we heard before. Like, are people just copying and pasting? How do we use it to be a sparring partner? What's that critical value and lens we're putting on it? Your example of the cred stack, where you're like, well, I didn't say AI should do the whole thing. No. But like, get us started. The designer works their magic, and then, that type of piece. And then there's a lot of like, how and what do we do? How does this affect our people? How do we upskill? Unfortunately, we see headlines of big companies doing layoffs. Like there was that one announcement from the Accenture CEO who's like, shape up or ship out if you're not on the AI train. There's a lot of, again, to your point, extremes. But, this is a moment that I bring it back to really feel this is a leadership challenge when it comes to trust, ethics, and capability, and ultimately your culture. And how are you bringing that culture and how you do things, those unspoken norms, and bringing AI into that fold.
Yeah. So it does start to feel like we're shifting on that curve, even compared to our last episode on AI, right? It's all the questions that you just brought up from what we're hearing around us are way more people focused, and like, how do we make this work? How do we work with it, not against it? And not so much of like, what is it capable of? So like we've shifted on that curve. So I think the whole concept of that adoption curve, change curve, and where people are at, I think for our listeners is a good moment to just pause and reflect. Like, where are you on that curve? Where's your team? And then most importantly, like, how does that match up? And how are you leading your team through that curve?
Yeah. Your customers.
And your customers. Yeah.
There's an article in HBR about boards and like you really think about every person you interact with directly or indirectly and where are they at.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it, again, reiterates to me that this is evolving from not just being a tech challenge, but like a people piece and really a leadership challenge for a bunch of people, whether you're an executive at a company, a middle manager, a team lead, or just peers working together, on a team project. Like that really plays a role. So leadership challenge.
Yeah,
for sure.